Tony, what do you look forward to most about the NFL Combine?
You know, I think one of my greatest sports regrets is never seeing Ted Ginn run the 40 at the combine because he got injured in the national championship game. Because that was one of the things I always wanted to see. It's always fun to watch the 40, and that's what everybody pays attention to. But also, we want to see what Jackson Smith and Jigba runs because one of the thoughts is he's not fast. He's not a fast guy. And they said the same thing about Garrett Wilson last year, and Garrett Wilson came out and ran a sub 4.5. So just stuff like that. I'm looking forward to seeing what Zach Harrison does. We've known he's been an incredible athlete for long before he was a Buckeye. He's a 6'6" track star. So I'm interested to see what he runs. But yeah, Steve, am I wrong? Should everything just be held in Indianapolis? Like all of the teams, everything should just be in Indianapolis. The entire Big Ten should just be in Indianapolis. You just stay there. We go there so many times a year. It would just be best to everybody move there.
Yeah, I think the Indiana Department of Taxation has found me. They're sending me letters like, you work here so much throughout the course of the year that you may as well pay taxes here in the great state of Indiana, which I don't know how I'm going to dodge them. But yeah, we're there. Used to be there every year for the Big Ten championship game. That was 4 years in a row. And that's kind of gone by the wayside the last couple of years. Maybe they'll get us back over there for that in 2023. But they usually have the preseason Big Ten football meeting there now because the championship game is held there. They've moved it from Chicago. A lot of it due to COVID, I think, was the primary reason that they moved out of Chicago. But Indianapolis, a great place. The Big Ten basketball tournament has been held there routinely. This year, unfortunately, it's moving to Chicago, so I won't be there next week for that. I'll be flying over it because I'm actually flying to the tournament this year. And so, yeah, it's our home away from home. I'm over there for travel basketball, probably 3 or 4 weekends a year. And then, Big Ten football. This year, Ohio State will play 3 games in Indiana in the first 6 weeks of the season with games at Notre Dame, Indiana, and Purdue. So we'll be, again, spending a lot more time in the state of Indiana and hunkering down on at least 1 or 2 of those trips, probably in Indianapolis as well. So, yeah, it's our home away from home, definitely. And, there are worse places in the world, I'll say that. The downtown's got a ton of great restaurants and bars, and OSU fans love it when they get to come over for the Big Ten tournament or the championship game.
Plus, I-70 is always easy travel.
Yeah, pretty simple. No fuss, no muss. Indiana, IDOT, I don't know what they call it. In Ohio, it's called ODOT. I am awaiting the day, Tony, that our federal government extends the Eisenhower interstate highway system to the great state of Indiana, because it always seems to be down to one lane a lot of places. But yeah, we'll one day those tax dollars will be at work for us, and Indiana too will have interstate highways.
Folks, we get Steve, we get Tony every week, typically Kevin Noon. Show your appreciation. These guys don't need to do this show. Don't say another word, Tony. They don't necessarily need to show up every week.
Well, we'd love to do it.
Yes, and I'm glad of that. I am glad of that. So not just an hour of their time. It's more about the expertise. It's more about the insight. And so please show your appreciation. All right. We will take your comments and your questions and your super chat contributions, of course. We will also let you know that we got a Big Ten show starting next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, 2 hours plus of Big Ten talk with all of you. All right. So who has the most on the line in Indianapolis?
Well, I think Jackson, to a degree, has got to show he's healthy. I don't think teams want to draft a guy who's damaged goods with that hamstring. Has that lingered? Where's he at? So I think that's one. I think DeJuan Jones in his hometown, getting some home cooking there for Mama, probably will show out. And he's got to show some agility at 6'8", 360 pounds, whatever he ends up weighing in at. He needs to show that he's got the agility to play tackle in the National Football League. It's one thing to have arms as long as telephone poles, to keep guys off of you, but those speed rushers, Nick Bosa, will also eat you up. So, in the blink of an eye, they're by you. So he's got to be able to do both. And I think that his agility is something that people will be looking for. And then CJ Stroud, it sounds like I think it's Saturday is when the quarterbacks will throw on NFL Network. And that'll be kind of fun to see him on the field trying to make all the different throws that you need to make. I thought he's coming off the best game of his college career against Georgia, even though they didn't win the game. I think he showed more in that one game against a great opponent than maybe he had shown in any other game. And to me, he's going into the combine on a high note. I mean, people who want to downrate him, in my mind, can do so at their own peril. So, yeah, to me, it's going to be interesting to see how those guys all do at the combine.
Yeah, I think I'll be interested to watch DeJuan Jones and Zach Harrison for sort of the same reason. DeJuan Jones had like a good day or two to start the Senior Bowl and then left. So that kind of irks some people in the NFL that, you show up, you flash, you make a good impression, and you're like, okay, I'm done. I've done what I needed to do. And Zach Harrison getting the invite, accepting the invite, and then deciding not to go. Was that an injury issue? Was that an agent issue? So those guys, I think, going into the Senior Bowl, had an opportunity to be second rounders. DeJuan Jones continues to climb. And so now they'll have to confirm some things or maybe overcome some things in the combine for no showing or leaving the Senior Bowl early. Because anytime you do something like that, it just creates questions in the NFL's eyes, and it may not some may not mind, but some always will. And so you've got an opportunity to answer those questions. And this will be the first time the NFL really gets their hands on Zach Harrison and gets a good look at him. I find it hard to believe they're not going to be pretty happy with what they see. It's just the fact that they didn't get to see the Senior Bowl. I think it irked some teams.
And based on our conversation when the invites were first announced, nobody got snubbed. There's really nobody left from the Ohio State team that didn't get an invite. Okay. Based on your observations of these various drills, not from an entertainment standpoint, but more from a practical standpoint, and what NFL scouts and people that you guys talk to, what seemed to be the most transferable skills, the drills that seem to be most important?
I think it varies by position and player. I think for those defensive linemen, that 3-cone drill is very important to show that you've got the agility and the ability to change direction, because the way quarterbacks move around in the pocket, they're not a sitting target. They step up, they drift outside. You got to be able to go with the pocket and go get that quarterback and make that play. So I think that's the first thing is with that. I think with some positions, raw speed. I mean, you talk about wide receivers, you're looking for a guy who can get behind the defense or who can, at the top end of his route, achieve outstanding speed. And I think so that's something that they're looking for. Ohio State doesn't have a running back at this combine, but obviously 40 speed would be important for running backs as well. And then, you think about the quarterbacks, again, agility is important for them. 40, not necessarily all that important maybe for them. I mean, it can be, but the NFL, if you're lucky to scramble for 10 or 12 yards and get down and get that first down, that's usually good enough, typically. So, I think it just depends by position what you're looking at. Obviously, with the offensive linemen, you've got to have a blend. You've got to be able to be agile as well as extremely strong. And so I think that they look at the bench press max, or the bench press reps rather, to get an idea of that strength. But it's a combination of things, I think, for offensive and defensive linemen. So, the blueprint will tell you one thing, the dossier of all the 40 times and the the reps and all that other stuff will tell you some things, but to me, putting the film on also tells you quite a bit about what kind of a motor a player has. Is he a self-starter and those kind of things? And I think that's got to be the ultimate. I think when you look at it.
And even when you're talking about the offensive linemen in the bench press, the tackles with the long arms, they don't get too worked up if the reps aren't there because the arms are longer. So DeJuan Jones coming in with apparently like the longest wingspan of anybody in NFL history, like he could maybe blow some people out of the water if he did a ton of bench press, a ton of reps. But if he doesn't, they'll just be like, well, he's got the long arms have, so don't worry about that. But then you need like Luke Whippler or the interior guys, the guards and the centers need to really do well on that. The 40 is interesting to me because they do the 10-yard splits. That's where it matters more for like the bigger guys, the linemen and things like that, the first 10 yards, something like that. I think it's interesting in college where you see more about the miles per hour. They're wearing the GPS units, and they talk more about miles per hour than 40s. So I wonder at what point. I guess it probably won't never get there with the combine because you're not necessarily asking somebody to go run 80 yards. You're just asking them to run 40, and you're trying to take it a little bit easier on them. But you don't hear as much about 40 in college as you do in the NFL with the combine. So that, as GOJ says, 40 times is fan entertainment. And that's true. It is entertaining. But if a receiver runs a 4.3 instead of a 4.4, he's suddenly now a first rounder instead of a third rounder.
In terms of the current Buckeyes, you mentioned that miles per hour because sometimes we'll get articles written where certain teams are tracked and so forth. Do we know who's been tracked and what those numbers have been in recent years?
Tyleik Williams, defensive tackle for Ohio State, posted some numbers recently where he was one of the fastest, but I think it's like weight adjusted and mass adjusted. So you tune all of this together, and he's like one of the fastest. He's always had a very good 10-yard first 10 yards. But so there are numbers like that floating around, but they're adjusted. And then you've also seen the pictures tweeted out of Ohio State's 40-yard dash chart sign in the locker room somewhere, and it's always been kind of laughed at a little bit because you've got like a Bradley Roby's a 4.26, and you've got these 4.3s and all these 4.2s that never actually happened in the combine. So you take those things with a grain of salt. But yeah, I remember, we've gone in for interviews in the past, over the past few years in the Woody on the practice field, and there'll be up on the screen like Jeff Okudah 22.6 miles per hour, Isaiah Pryor 21.2, and they'll just have it who is the fastest of camp so far. So in terms of who is the fastest on this year's team, keep an eye on Jaden Ballard. I'd say he was one of the two that was mentioned last year with J.K. Johnson, and since J.K. Johnson is no longer on the team, I'd say Jaden Ballard might be the fastest guy now.
Yeah, certainly Chris Spielman and James Laurinaitis are thankful that the Rams and the Lions looked at the game tape and not necessarily the combine results. And I'm not even
second round bums.
Yes, absolutely. We got Tony here. We got Steve here. You can catch Tony's work on Buckeye Huddle. His podcast is Buckeye Weekly and the College Football Playoff right here. And of course, Steve, Bucknuts 247 Sports. And we thank Steve for posting these podcasts on Bucknuts. Very, very kind of him to do that. To give us more exposure here at the Voice of College Football and invite some other people here to our show each and every week, which is typically on Wednesday, but Steve's got a trip to Indy to make. Other highlights, how much has that trip changed, Steve, since you started? And Tony, you can chime in, of course, just in regards to like anything else in, I was going to say the NFL, but it's certainly gone to college football with the various media days and so forth, where these events started as little small gatherings and they have just blown up into media events.
Yeah, it has changed quite a bit. It used to be held on the concourse of Lucas Oil Stadium in like a club, like an exclusive club room that they have there for people who are premium seat holders. And it was very limited space. In fact, there were sometimes if you didn't get there early enough to get a workstation, you worked out in the hallway, sometimes on the floor in the hallway. That'll just tell you, 15 years ago, what this was. It was just not this mega event. Now it takes up this huge space in the convention center, which is the size of about 10 airplane hangars there in downtown Indianapolis, this huge, huge facility. And they have obviously a place in there for a fan experience. Fans can come in and watch the bench presses as they're done. And in an adjacent room, we have interview facilities. And then in another entire portion of the convention center is the workroom. So it's about I joke, it's not a half-mile walk, but it's at least a quarter to a third of a mile walk from the workroom down to where we do the interviews. And you only want to make that trip like once or twice a day. So you go when you go down, you're going down for the duration, and then you go back up to post all of your stuff. And so it is quite a production, and it lasts 4 days for us. And they've got it split up. So today is actually NFL personnel, coaches and general managers and presidents will be speaking throughout the day, and some of those will be featured on NFL Network. But the draft prospects start tomorrow. I think it's defensive linemen and linebackers tomorrow. Then defensive backs, we get to interview on Thursday. Quarterbacks, including Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, and wide receivers, including Jackson Smith-Njigba, on Friday. And then Saturday, we get to interview offensive linemen. So the players come in and do their media interviews before they do any of the workouts. While all this is going on, they are also involved in interviews with teams. It's kind of like speed dating. They put their name in for X number of players to come and meet with them at their cabana or their cubicle or whatever it is there at the convention center. And it's kind of a getting to know you type thing. And for quarterbacks, they might put a play up on the whiteboard or on the video board and say, what were you doing here? What was your thought process? And try and learn a little bit about the players in those settings. And then basically 2 days after we talk to them, they'll be on the field doing their 40s and their on-field workouts. So the quarterbacks, as I said, maybe Friday, but then maybe they're throwing Saturday or Sunday. I don't have the exact schedule in front of me, but that kind of give you an idea that it's an all-week event. And we'll go through, I think Sunday is the last day for the on-field stuff as well. So, it is really become a made-for-television production. And in the past, they've kept the media out of the stadium and only allowed NFL Network cameras in there. But this year, it sounds like they are allowing some media to attend those events. I'm not sure if we can video those workouts or just take still photos or just observe, but some of us will probably be going over there to check that out during the course of the week.
Yeah, just looking at the schedule, quarterbacks are Saturday, March 4th, along with receivers. So you'll see Stroud and Jackson Smith-Njigba that same day. So that'll be a big one to watch. That's like an all-day thing too. So that'll be something for Ohio State fans to tune in. So get your honey-do list done early Saturday so that you can sit in front of the television just like any old regular Saturday and watch some Ohio State football-ish. You'll see some highlights, that's for sure.
So, guys, I run into this all the time. Anytime I kind of spin that coverage and cross the line into the NFL, where a number of people don't want to hear about it. They don't care. Once that particular player takes off the scarlet and gray, it's sayonara, see ya. So any type of NFL draft, NFL combine, dipping into the NFL playoffs after the college season's over and the Super Bowl is a red letter day here for some people at the Voice of College Football. So in your interactions with Ohio State fans, how much do they care about success in the NFL?
I think it's like anything. If there's something to compete with another school, Ohio State fans are into it. It's, DBU, wide receiver U, QBU, all of those different things. It's kind of like with recruiting. Everything is competition, and especially with the NFL, like if Ohio State fans really want to get into it, they can tout their school with the best of them, and there's no matches in the Big Ten for Ohio State when it comes to the NFL. So why wouldn't Ohio State fans be into it?
Yeah, I think it runs the gamut. I think some fans, obviously, on Sunday want a reason to tune in and watch some of these games, and have enjoyed at times watching guys like Ezekiel Elliott do well. When the Bears are doing well and Justin Fields is playing well, you'll see some interest about that on our message board. And certainly, all the other guys. I mean, the two Bosa brothers are among the best players in the league, and up and down the line. So yeah, it's. I think it's a fun thing. I think Ohio State fans took great enjoyment knowing they had the two best rookie wide receivers in the game. Excuse me, this year. I'm having a hard time talking, with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So that was kind of a fun thing for people to talk about.